This podcast is brought to you by Raising Mama, a bamboo baby brand dedicated to empowering moms during postpartum and raising awareness about maternal mental health. Raising Mama's buttery soft bamboo pajamas aren't just designed to help babies sleep better, they're made to support mothers too. And for every pair sold, a portion of the proceeds is donated to Postpartum Support International. As a thank you for listening, enjoy 20% off your next order with code RaisingMamaVillage at checkout, because we're all in this together. Coming up,
Pregnant ladies, don't think your multivitamin or prenatal is going to close the gaps on all the possible deficiencies that you might have, because a lot of that data that was in your multivitamin was all based on some 1980s research. There's been much more research to prove that there's more efficient ways to kind of prep your body if you have a deficiency. Hey y'all.
Hey mamas.
Welcome back to Raising Mama.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Chelsea.
I'm a divorced mama of 2 toddlers, sharing custody while running my own business.
And I'm a full-time nurse, pregnant with my second baby, and married to a stay-at-home dad.
Join us while we talk about the most pressing issues related to postpartum and new parenthood. Before we dive in, hit the subscribe button for more expert insights and honest conversations on Raising Mama podcast. Pregnancy is often described as exhausting, overwhelming, and even depleting. But what if it didn't have to be? Today, we're joined by Alexandra Radway, an MIT-trained engineer turned functional nutrition therapy practitioner who has taken her analytical expertise and applied it to optimizing pregnancy and postpartum. Through her work at Holistic Pregnancy Prep and Baby Ready University, she's helping ambitious women prepare their bodies for the most important marathon of their lives, pregnancy. Tune in as we discuss how biohacking and strategic nutrition can transform your experience from survival mode to thriving. But before we dive in, we have a quick favor to ask. We're a small podcast trying to help as many moms as possible, and the best way you can support us is by subscribing. That's it. Just hit that subscribe button. It's the only thing we'll ever ask of you, and it makes a huge difference in getting this content to moms who need it. Now let's get started. So welcome, Alexandra. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. And your background is so unique. Well, like when I found you on Instagram, I was like, who is this girl? So how did you go from MIT and engineering to functional nutrition and pregnancy prep?
So there's a short version and a long version. So I'm going to give you the medium version.
Ooh.
But it started my freshman year of MIT when the Dalai Lama came to visit campus. You know, the guy, orange robes, little glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a profound experience so my mom got me tickets. I went to see it. I didn't think a big deal out of it. And it was an interesting ceremony, all that jazz. But there was a moment during that session that changed my life forever. And that moment was basically, there was this panel of young women, high school age girls, and they had recently run an award, one for community service, social engagement. And their prize for winning that award was being able to interview the Dalai Lama live on this panel,
Wow.
Kind of full auditorium, 1,000 people. So it was, pretty cool. And one of the girls asked the Dalai Lama, "What is your advice for young women today?" And he's a very endearing person, but he told this story, and he shared how he was taken away from his mother at a very young age. That's part of, to become the Dalai Lama, you have to be taken away and trained by the monks. And so he shared this, I don't have very many memories with my mother, but I do have this one memory of being a little boy and riding on her shoulders and using her ears to steer her. And he mimicked it, and he was so cute. And he said, that's such a special memory for me. And so my advice to young women today is to spend more time with their children. Now, it wasn't that the Dalai Lama had said that, and it wasn't, right, that wasn't the big deal. That wasn't what spoke to me. It was the look of disgust on that young girl's face. And I saw in that look of disgust, right, because a reflection of the own hardness in my own heart towards my femininity, towards my womanhood, and towards motherhood. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt God calling me to a vocation. And I had this, and I have no real way to explain other than in that reaction, in that moment, I knew that God was calling me to be a mother. And up until then, that hadn't been the plan for my life. And yeah, so that really changed everything. That really changed how I approached MIT. That changed the kind of men I was interested in, the kind of relationships I pursued. And shortly thereafter, the Lord provided my husband, which was a wonderful thing. And my husband, on our first real conversation, I love my husband, but he told me he wanted to have 5 kids in like the first conversation. And, you know, for a lot of people, I feel like that would be off-putting, but for him, like, this is it. Like, no more. Like, people, like, he's here. Like, he's been here. But and eventually that calling, it led me to come to know Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And that changed everything in my life and changed what I believed about myself, it just allowed me to truly appreciate how beautiful I am because of a perfect person that would choose to love me, even as broken as I was at that time. But essentially, that kind of put me on the trajectory of young motherhood. And I got married right after MIT. I had my son within a year of graduating. And through that experience of having my son, really what created holistic pregnancy prep is there was this gap of what I knew to be true or believed to be true, which is that children are a blessing, right? And that I truly feel that God had presented that truth on my heart and just said, this is truth. And when I went through my first pregnancy experience, I was excited to be a mom. I loved being pregnant. I genuinely did. But my actual experience physically was very, very difficult, right? It wasn't the kind of experience where I'm like, oh yes, I love this. Give me more, right? It's like,
no, really?
It's like, and there were things I mean, the baby kicks and, you know, but the beauties were really outweighed by like, oh my goodness, like every time I eat fat, I'm in pain for the next 4 to 8 hours. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, and I have like if I try to pick up anything more than 5 pounds, my pelvic pain is so debilitating that I'm like on my hands and knees in tears. And right. And so there was this disconnect, and I could go on to, and I was trying to do all the crunchy things because that was a different part of my journey. And I had, you know, these midwives, and I did the birth center thing. And then my son wasn't breathing, and they tried to resuscitate him for 5 minutes. And then the paramedics took him away. And it was 2 hours before I knew if he was alive. And it was a whole deal.
Oh my gosh. I love how you just like lightly tacked that on at the end. That is insane.
So, so coming out of that experience, I really got, you know, and I have like, thankfully breastfeeding with my first just went so smoothly. And I had a beautiful postpartum in spite of a lot of the things that happened in a lot of ways, but I was not thriving. Like I was watching Netflix all day, and then you got to like, you know, I was just traumatized, dissociated, like not really in my body, able to like show up with energy and joy to my son in the way that I really wanted to. I just was kind of coasting by. And the other thing, and it's turning into the long version, feel free to redirect me, but what the big issue that had happened is I had these health issues come up during my pregnancy, and no one really had solutions, and because they were pregnancy side effects. But I get to postpartum and I'm like, well, I'm not pregnant anymore, and I'm still having a lot of these symptoms. Mm-hmm. So they're not pregnancy side effects. Like there's actually something going on. And kind of simultaneously, I had always been intrigued by traditional cultures. and gained a lot of inspiration from them. And even before I had my first, like what I read books. One was called Joyous Childbirth Changes the World, which is from a Japanese OBGYN, really fascinating book. And that changed how I looked at everything. But what I realized was that when you look at traditional cultures, they truly described, like they were experiencing what I believe to be true, that children are a blessing, that pregnancy is a delight, that it is energizing and enlivening, and just truly, like, you know, you think about, how does pregnancy begin? It's supposed to be an orgasmic, pleasurable experience, and it's supposed to just grow and build, and birth is meant to be the culmination of that. And what I saw when I looked at traditional cultures is I saw evidence of women experiencing that. And it kept circling back to, I believe this to be true. I experienced a certain extent of it, but I didn't fully experience what I believe to be possible for me. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, why should, and I don't mean this, I don't want to sound this in a condescending way, but I'm a well-resourced, well-educated, modern woman. And I think that's a great thing. Why am I not able to experience this when some traditional woman who can't read, can't write, has never left her village, like, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't have the resources that I do, it just enjoys it as her birthright. And so that really set me on the mission of, okay, let's find the tools, right? Because I'm an engineer. And so when an engineer is faced with a big problem, they don't, and they look for the tools, and no, as long as you find the right tools and you use the right ingenuity with those tools, no problem is too big to be solved for an engineer. And that's what I love about MIT. And that's why I wanted to go to MIT. It's because I wanted to become the person that could solve impossible problems.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I'll talk
it.
All day. And so, no, I get it. Thank you for sharing your story. And what I love about your story is I think it resonates so well to so many women, where you expect one thing and you totally experience another. But what's different about you is you didn't take that sort of cognitive disconnect and go, so what's wrong with me? You kind of went, so what's wrong with everybody else? How can I use my MIT background and break this down? Because clearly some people get to enjoy the experience of birth and having kids, and it is magnificent. Of course, it's not sunshine and rainbows 24/7, but maybe aren't experiencing, like you said, the crippling experience that many women feel, which is just like, I know that I love my child. I know that this is a blessing. I know I really wanted this, and I'm not thriving. And I think that can be such a hard thing for people to say, or for people to even just accept in themselves. So I'm just so curious with your little MIT brain, like, what did you come up with? Like, what is wrong with everybody else? Like, what is it that could kind of, if somebody was feeling this way, what could they maybe reach for that other than just thinking, oh, it's my fault. I don't know, I'm not grateful enough, or I'm not whatever. Because that's the line of thought I think most women go to is, it's my fault.
Mm-hmm. And so two things. One thing, the simple shift that changed everything for me, and this seems so ridiculously simple, but it just was not it was really hard for me to access during my first pregnancy, was the concept that even if you're pregnant, if you are in pain, or if your body is expressing symptoms, that means something is wrong. Right? Like, and in every other context, we get that, right? Like, if you don't feel good, it means your body doesn't have something it needs.
Right.
And when I brought that into my second pregnancy, and a big thing that shifted everything, definitely where it all started, is I read a book and it described all the functions of the liver. Now, I technically had, quote, like the best education money can buy. I didn't even know I had a gallbladder until it gave out on me during pregnancy, right? Like basic, like I think you probably should know like all the internal organs you have and what all of their functions are. And most of us don't. Like, your doctor doesn't even know how you digest your food. If you go to your standard primary care doctor and ask them, okay, how do I turn food into something, like into the nutrients that my body can actually use to keep me alive, get into my cells, like, they don't actually understand the process. And so when I stumbled across this book, because I'd had the liver issues, a big issue, one of the reasons I believe I had so many, like, why my birth went so wrong. And I talked like, my body didn't have the capacity to grow a baby that could bear the stress of being born. Because there really wasn't any complications of my labor. It truly was because my digestive system had shut down and I was literally starving for 3 months because I didn't gain. I mean, I was eating, but I couldn't actually break down and absorb the nutrients from my food. So I didn't gain a single pound from my third trimester, like the start of my third trimester when the problem really got exacerbated, till the end of my pregnancy. But my son was 8 pounds, 16 ounces. So he kept growing. And I was shrinking. I was my pre-pregnancy weight 5 days postpartum, which is, it's not like, oh, look at me, I bounced back. Like, that's not like my butt. Like, I had no glute muscles. Like, I was emaciated. Right. And that's not where you want to be when you then have to go on and care for a baby and have this toddler that you want to baby wear and do all the crunchy things with. But you're like, oh my gosh, I can hold him for 5 minutes. And then my back hurts so much. Like, he's just got to go in the stroller. And bringing that around, I realized, and I want to preface this with, like, even with that experience, I had been eating organic, and I was 21 at the time, for 6 years. Like, I had gotten into clean eating at 15. Like, I was the healthiest, and by healthiest, like, strictest about my food consumption kind of person that I knew. Like, I was doing everything. Low tox house. I like bought these, like, I was even going to buy like kamut grains to stuff my own pillows. Cause like I couldn't, like, I didn't want polyester. I didn't want memory foam, like I was doing the most. Okay. Because again, like, being a mom, right? This is my life's purpose. This is my calling. And I'm a woman that is used to succeeding and used to doing well. And so I wanted to do my absolute best. Now, that doesn't mean I did things, but like, that was really important to me. But the thing was, what I was putting my energy into, it wasn't high leverage things, right? It was like, the kamut pillows aren't going to make a difference if you cannot get nutrients from your food. You know what I mean? So you have to we really want to have this focus on efficiency and optimization, because we all only have so many hours a day. We only have so much money to invest in our health, and we only have so much capacity, right? Just there's only so many things we can do. And so, to bring us back to your original question, when I went about solving this problem, I really had to think about, okay, what is the mother, like, I call it the mother of all problems, but like, what is the one locus where so many other things stem from? And it's a bit of an oversimplification to say there's absolutely one locus for your entire body. But that book on the liver, when I saw one organ has over 500 functions, and they're so critical, that really got me on a path towards healing. And it truly, what I want to, the gift that motherhood has given me is that because the way I've shown up for my body, because of my boys, because of the children that I desire, because of how important they are to me, I've showed up for my body in a way I never would have showed up for myself. Right? I never would have showed up for myself in that way. But through this process, now I have learned to show up for myself in that way. And I can be grateful to be 28 years old, and the time when people are like, oh, I'm about to be 30, everything's falling apart. And I am literally in the best health of my life. I just had lab work done. I have a biological age of 17. I feel better than I felt at 17. And I don't feel like I'm on this step. Like, I feel like I have the tools to continue to improve. And so the short answer of your question, for a woman that's like, the woman that is looking for the way to experience the joy again, we have to think about how can we increase your capacity. And I'd love to, if you want to, we can talk about capacity more, but I'll give you a chance to follow up.
Yeah, I mean, you've said that pregnancy is like running a marathon every day for 9 months, which I totally attest to. So what are the top 3 biohacks women can use to prepare their bodies for this challenge?
Yes. So I think, and this is less a biohack, but more of a mindset, but understand, okay, if you were to sign, if you were like, hey, I'm going to go sign up to run a marathon every day for the next 9 months, you probably wouldn't show up with no preparation, no conditioning, no training. Like if your husband was going to do that, or if your partner, right? If a man was going to go do that, I mean, some men might just show up, but they'd be like, oh yeah, let's prepare, let's train, let's get in the best shape. Like if a man's doing triathlons, he's investing in the best possible bike. He's got the fancy shoes. I mean, you know what I mean? They're getting all the things. And yet when we look at a pregnancy, we're not conditioned to prepare. We're not given that guidance. If you go to your OBGYN, you're told, oh, take a prenatal, stop the pill, like as soon as you want to try and everything will be fine. And that is really, and I've had so many stories of ladies that when they're viewed as being like too type A or like overkill or, right? Like you're overthinking it. I've heard the story that, oh, don't worry, like I really think you're overthinking it. Like women have babies every day. Yes, yes, women do have babies every day, but what is their experience like? And is that the experience that you're desiring, right? Because any human, right, if you put enough pressure behind them, like if God forbid something terrible comes and you have to run away, like humans have the capacity to run a marathon every day for 9 months on end. But if you're a prepared human, right, there's certain humans that can go through that experience, come out on the other side, like be, it's this most profound, transformative experience of my life. It really built me up. I saw so much of the world. Like it was like there was challenge with it, but it was this incredible thing. And then there's another human that could come out of that experience and be permanently injured, traumatized, like on the side of the road, like they just don't make it. Like someone has to come pick them up and save them. And so I think just understanding that and looking at it that way, then it makes so much more sense, right? It makes so much more sense. Like, okay, yeah, because we apply this to every other area of our life. So once you have that starting point, then it goes into, okay, how do I actually prepare? Like what actually matters? And I would say some of the most important things, are some of the simplest things. So things like hydration, and not just like, let's guzzle a gallon of water a day, but actually understanding how can I get that hydration into my cells, because water is your nutrient highway. So and it's also the exit pathway for toxicity. And I could get into, if we're having health issues, it's a toxicity crisis. So if we're dehydrated, right, and actually drinking a bunch of water that doesn't have the appropriate electrolyte ratio is actually going to be dehydrating. Drinking large volumes of water with your meals is actually going to ruin your capacity to digest your meals. And it's just like so simple little things. And then the second thing is understanding that the driver of female hormones, right, of women's hormones, which everything is, pregnancy is it's a hormonal process. The main driving hormone is melatonin. And your melatonin production is directed by your light environment, right? So everyone's talking about food and seed cycling and this and that and all of those things for hormonal balances. But the number one intervention for hormonal health is creating a natural light environment and balancing your circadian rhythm.
That totally makes sense. So the 3 biohacks from an MIT specialist turned, baby ready method gal is number 1, mindset, baby. If you're going to have a pregnancy, yes, everyone does it every day, just like people run marathons every day. But what kind of marathon do you want? Get prepared. have the one that's successful where you feel really like throwing your hands up in the air and being like, I did it. Number 2, understand how water works, not just that it hydrates you, but this is how you process all your toxins in your body, and that a good amount of making you feel better is understanding not just drinking water, but how it works on a cellular level. And then number 3 is basically your environment plays a huge part, particularly with women, in hormones, and understanding melatonin and understanding how to get your body to cycle through melatonin in those really healthy sleep patterns can like be a huge biohack that lots of pregnant women, I don't think we necessarily, I'm pregnant right now. I'm going to have a baby in a couple weeks. I don't do really any of those things. So
Yep.
I'm also a healthcare professional and a nurse. And I wanted to say one more thing that I just really wanted to illustrate because I think you said it so beautifully, that maybe what Western modern women are missing is they're giving away the autonomy of their body to the healthcare system or to the experts.
Yeah.
And we forget just how much we are the CEOs of our own body. And like you said, if you feel sick or weird, then tune in, listen in. Like we can actually have a pretty good idea of what's going on, and we can start to learn just the basics, like what are the organs in your body? How does water get to our tissues? Like, how should we sleep at night? And these are the things nobody's talking about. And these are the things that maybe in other non-Western societies, nobody has to talk about because they're the social norm. You know, nobody's like, so what do you do to stay up till 2 a.m. to get your MIT brief done? No, they're not doing that. So it's just such a wonderful thing that you're here, because all of these things, I'm like, oh, I don't do that. I don't do that. Okay, I got to research this. I'm totally this like Western woman just going down this path of probably not having the best, most optimal birth and marathon experience that I know I want.
All right, we're going to pause the show for just a minute because I want to share something personal with you. After having my first baby, I felt completely unprepared for how challenging postpartum life would be. I quickly realized that society just doesn't give moms the support we deserve. That's why I created Raising Mama, to make those early days just a little bit easier. Raising Mama pajamas are made from the softest bamboo fabric, engineered with micro gaps to help babies sleep better and give mamas a much needed boost. The prints feature uplifting messages like, Mama, I wished for you, and it's okay to ask for help. Phrases that are meant to prevent those negative thought cycles that so many of us struggle with during postpartum. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want to give you a special 20% off with the code Raising Mama Village. Plus, every time you buy a pair, we donate $1 to Postpartum Support International to support maternal mental health. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Now let's get back to the show.
You're seeing it on the point. And one of the things I love about nutritional therapy is this idea of the innate intelligence. And a lot of my work is simply because a lot of times if you tell people you're a nutritionist, they give you this look like, please don't take away my French fries, or like, like they get really defensive. And I joke, like, I hate telling people what to eat. Like, that's not my vibe. Like, I'm not here to judge people about how good they're eating or not. One, because I followed the rules all so perfectly, and I was still super, super sick because there's things that are more important than food. But what I would say is that you can train your body, like your body can only crave what it knows. So your body is you're already listening to your innate intelligence, and your body's trying to keep itself in homeostasis because it loves you and it wants to keep you alive. It wants to be fertile. It wants to give you beautiful babies. It wants to, have just happy, just a wonderful life. Like, that's what it wants for you. And right now its tools are kind of limited, right? For example, this is a classic one. We learn in nutritional therapy school, but if you have a fatty acid deficiency, like a sign of that for a lot of people is craving French fries. Now, French fries aren't going to resolve you. So if you're that person that like drives by McDonald's and, it's like the smell just like exudes out of the place and you're like, like, I'm like, I don't love McDonald's, but like, oh, those French fries smell good. Okay. It's because your body needs fatty acids. And for the average, like 30 to 50% of the calories, let alone fatty acid, but calories in the standard American diet are from seed oils, where we can't actually, those aren't healthful fatty acids. They're rancid. Like your body can't actually do anything that it needs to with those. But those are really the only fatty acids that it's known. And so you can actually train your body to crave like sardines or cod liver oil or avocados. Like you can, if you expose your body to those foods consistently enough, it's trying to keep you in balance. And so when you're getting cravings, you can condition your body to crave things that are good for you. And then taking care of your health literally becomes effortless. And it just takes a little bit of upfront work when you have the right steps to follow. So, okay, like you do the initial training and then you can just basically, I don't want to say coast, but the rest of your life, your body's like, I know what these tools are, and your innate intelligence will literally tell you exactly what it needs. I had a client in my coaching program, and she was getting to the third, shifting to her third trimester. She came to a coaching call and she's like, hey, like, are there any, I just want to check in, like any dietary shifts I should be thinking about, like going into the third trimester. And I talked about, like we become a bit more insulin resistant. So we want to like cut a little bit back on the carbs, like increase the proteins, definitely increase like leafy greens, like keep the liver. We have like a bunch of extra estrogen at the end of the third trimester, and your liver has to work through all of that. And I kind of gave her the list of things, and she's like, that's exactly what my body's been asking for. Like, you don't need to come to the call. And obviously we had been working together for a year at this point. Like she had been doing the work. But it just, sometimes it blows me away. Like my clients, like literally, like that is the innate intelligence. And when you give it, it's basically like building up the library that it can pull from. When you expose it to more things, then it understands, okay, when this is out of balance, this is a tool that I can ask Alexandra to get for me, or this tool or that tool. And the reality is that most of us just have never been exposed to the most effective tools. And so we cannot crave the things that are going to be balancing for us and supportive for us.
Amen. All right, Miss Megan, I know you got like 500,000 questions in there. What's next on the docket? Because I'm curious. I want to know.
I keep thinking about prenatal vitamins, and how a lot of women, including myself, are, that's like sort of the only thing like your doctor tells you to do in terms of nutrients and stuff. Like what? I mean, I have like some background in vitamins, and like, they're not all the same sort of, because we want to focus on absorption and stuff. But what are your thoughts on that? Like what if you're pregnant right now, like how important is a prenatal, and what kind of prenatal should you be taking? And is that the only thing that you should be taking?
How about this? I'm pregnant. I got the basic prenatal medicine from Planned Parenthood. What's wrong with my prenatal? What am I missing?
Yeah. So there's two aspects. There's one thing. Ideal world, we don't need prenatals. Ideal world, we get all of our nutrients from food. Our food is grown locally. It's freshly picked. It's not on the shelf for a long time, losing all of these nutrients. For example, folate, that's the big one.
Right? So that's not going to work.
Right. Let's so here's there is an ideal world, and some people live in a closer to ideal world. Like that does apply to some people.
That's true.
And for those people, maybe they don't need supplementation, right? Because with anything, nothing is without risk, right? Even any food you eat, like, collard greens are super high in lead, but that's just how collard greens are. Like no food is without risk, and no intervention was without risk. It's all about weighing the risk versus benefit. And so when you're looking at a prenatal vitamin, I would say for most women, we're not meeting those nutrient needs from food. It's very, very difficult, especially if you're looking at folate. I did a graphic on this once, and I'd pull it, but it's like multiple cups of chickpeas to get your folate requirement per day, like 10 cups of greens, and and we have to, when we talk about, when they calculate how much nutrient is in a specific food, it's somewhat imprecise. But when you look back on traditional cultures, I've read some really interesting books at looking at traditional diets, right? The diets that led to people that not only had these easeful pregnancies where first-time labors were an average of 2 to 3 hours, and the vast majority of women, it's only like maybe 1 out of 150 would need any form of would not be able to birth successfully without assistance. Whereas if you look in the US today, only 5% of women give birth without major medical intervention. There's a study out of California that found that. So when you look at their diets, it is so radically different, how the food was prepared, everything, all great. You'd soak grains for 24 hours to increase their nutrient bioavailability. So much care was put into the preparation of foods that it is very hard to mimic that in a modern diet. Now, that's not to say it doesn't matter what you eat. You can make yourself feel a lot better by choosing nourishing, healthful foods, and they're very important. And you can't get everything from a vitamin. You do need to get things from foods. But I would say most women really do benefit from a high quality prenatal. Now, the issue is that, okay, we'll get into the goods of this, but the main reason you're given a prenatal is for folic acid. That's really the solid point of evidence that your OBGYN has, that they did studies back in the 80s and they showed folic acid reduces the incidence of neural tube defects. Now, that's great. This is great. It's cool they found that out. Neural tube defects, it's a devastating birth defect. It's also very, very rare. It's they are very, very rare. And I think what you need to understand is that's literally the only thing your OBGYN can help you with in the preparation phase. And so sure, that's a good tool, but what about everything else? What about everything else that needs to develop? What about everything else that your body needs to do to feel well and function? And the crazy thing is that because they proved that folic acid, which is a very synthetic form that is very metabolically difficult for your body to turn into the activated methylated folate that it can actually use, because they prove that folic acid prevents neural tube defects, it is unethical to study any of the newer, more bioavailable forms, right? Because back in the 80s when they proved this, they didn't have shelf-stable methylated folate. And so it's literally they're we can never look at this again. It would be unethical to run a trial. So your OBGYN has to recommend folic acid to you, even though there are much better forms on the market. And folic acid can actually increase the risk of miscarriage. They've looked at, especially for women with the MTHFR mutation. There was a study in Turkey, and it's a small study, but it's really, really profound. It tripled the risk of miscarriage in these women when they were given high amounts of folic acid versus methylated folate. It doubled the risk of several labor complications like preeclampsia, hypertension. There's several ones. It's a mind-blowing study. And this is something that honestly upsets me, because your OBGYN has to recommend folic acid, and there's clear evidence for some women that increases the risk of miscarriage. And I believe that is ending the life of a child.
So then if you were to get a non-basic multivitamin or prenatal, you could maybe get one that has this, what did you call it?
You're looking for methylated folate.
Methylated
and there's
folate.
A few different forms. Folinic acid, calcipolinate. The other one is, it's a long name, but it's methyl 5-tetra. I don't have it in front of me, so I won't be able to say it. But you'll see methylfolate in the name. Now, there's other important things in a prenatal. I actually teach a prenatal supplementation framework as part of the Baby Ready Body method, because yes, we want a robust prenatal, but you can't, and even the prenatal, I have a few favorite brands, but they all typically have around 6 capsules a day. And a lot of women balk at that. You can't, in 1 capsule a day, you're barely getting anything. That's just the reality. And even in 6 capsules a day, you can't get nearly enough magnesium. You can't get nearly enough things like vitamin C, nearly enough. You can't get a food-based, like a safe, bioavailable form of vitamin A, which is so critical to fetal development. Vitamin A is what allows your internal organs to develop asymmetrically and your external organs to develop symmetrically. And so what do we see? What do we see? Scoliosis. There's so many birth defects that stem from vitamin A deficiency, and the vast majority of women are vitamin A deficient because the primary food sources are things like full fat cream, liver, cod liver oil, meats generally, but all of these foods that have been vilified. And I've seen so many. I mean, one of my dearest friends, actually, she's here visiting me right now, but she had terrible jaw issues, terrible scoliosis. Like she's now, she's turned it into something beautiful, and she has her own profession as a physical therapy practitioner, and she helps people with their pain, and she uses all these really cool integrative techniques. But she really, really struggled to develop. And you look at her mom, and it was the 90s, and she was on an extreme low fat diet because that was trending at the time. And all of these developmental issues that my dear friend went into, and you can, there's always a light to come out of these things. That's the beautiful thing about life. But it's as simple as it was because her mom didn't get enough vitamin A in her diet. And I have another client who she had basically I could do stories all day, so I'll leave it there. But these things are very, very important, and your baby cannot develop properly without these nutrients. And a lot of these things we really have simply normalized, but I do think it's really, really worth it's so like when you look at traditional cultures, they would like men in the Andes would hike like from the Andes to the ocean, like 2-3 days, so they could get seafood for their women, so they could have iodine. Otherwise, like their women would miscarry, they wouldn't be able to have babies, like they would have all these problems. And so when there weren't any other tools, people would prioritize this, right? Like imagine your husband's like, okay, I got to go get you I gotta go get your supplements. I'll be back in 3 days, because that was their only option, right? And I think for us, yes, it feels easy, like, oh, I can just take this one a day. It's cheap. Like that should be good enough. But when we can access so much more, right? And in compared to the effort that it was for people that came before us, like how easy it is to access these higher quality nutrients and give those to ourselves and to our children, like it seems like an obvious answer to me.
So pregnant ladies, don't think your multivitamin or prenatal is going to close the gaps on all the possible deficiencies that you might have. And you should look at all the other resources out there that can help your baby grow, because a lot of that data that was in your multivitamin was all based on some 1980s research that there's been much more research to prove that there's more efficient ways to kind of prep your body if you have a deficiency.
Yeah, there's much better quality tools out there. Right now, there's no proven prevention for neural tube defects other than folic acid, right? Which is why ACOG only recommends that. But it makes more sense when you realize, well, but they haven't been allowed to study anything else.
Right.
And for me, it's like, I'm not going to walk around using like a phone. Like I have a post I made about this, and it shows like what a cell phone looked like in the 80s. And it's like, is that the technology that you want to be like relying on for your children's future? And for me, no. Yeah. That's not the kind of like, no, right? We've come a long way since then. So I'm going to be looking for the best possible technology to use.
Love it. Love it. Well, I think my brain is going to explode with all this new wisdom about vitamins and minerals. But I'm still so happy that I am exposed to this, because otherwise I wouldn't be. So
I wish I knew some of this stuff ahead of time. And I definitely think that, one day when it's time for me to have another baby, that I'm going to be a lot more mindful about it and do more of my own research about like what I can do, in this regard, especially that like those first 3 months when you basically feel like you've been hit by a bus and you're so tired.
What if you didn't have to feel that way?
I know, right? I mean,
What if
it's almost unbelievable, right?
I mean,
like
because I have protocols for that. I've had clients. I didn't have morning sickness with my second when I used those protocols. I had so much energy my first trimester. Like, I'm not a runner, but I just like, it was COVID. We were staying with my in-laws, and I was just like, anyway, I just like was going out for runs for fun. Like that was my first try. And we literally went on a 6-week trip. We had planned it. There's more to it. I had fertility challenges between the first and second. Anyway, I didn't know I was pregnant when I left for the trip. And had I not had the tools of nutritional therapy, and I had prepared my body, but it was a combination of the preparation work I had done plus the nutritional therapy tools that I used during pregnancy. If I had not had those, that trip would have been disaster. I mean, I had a 2.5-year-old staying with my in-laws, staying with my dad. I mean, it's like 6 weeks away. It was not, I mean, it was nice. My mother-in-law was like cooking for me. I wasn't like, I did have a few food aversions and a few things, but I would, take an occasional nap, but I was at the beach. I summited like the tallest mountain in Park City. Like, we hiked up you can like hike up and ride the chairlift down, or you can pay to ride the chairlift up and then hike down. And we didn't want to pay. So we hiked up and rode the chairlift down for free. But I summited that mountain right now. 8 weeks pregnant with my 30-pound toddler on my back.
Girl.
And not because like I had to for some extreme like survival situation. It's just, it was a beautiful day. And I wanted to enjoy a beautiful day with my child. And I could, because of the work that I'd done with my preconception prep. Right. And I share this, right, because I feel like women are so hesitant when they have a pregnancy that goes well. They feel like they shouldn't share to, because of other women's experience. And I feel like I'm in I feel blessed by the fact that, I had a pregnancy that was really, really hard. And I'm sure women have had pregnancies that were harder, right? And it's not a pain competition, right? But I know, like, I've had both. And so for me, it's really important to share what's possible, because I know if I hadn't seen, for example, there was one moment that was so profound, like, sometimes the smallest moments, just like you see it and then your brain is open to that possibility. I invited a friend over to a potluck, and she was 6 months pregnant. I went out. It was like Arizona, Phoenix summer. Like, the heat was like wafting up the blacktop. I went to go help her like carry the stuff from the car. Like, she's pregnant. She's got a toddler. She needs help. And this mama, 6-month baby belly, she clips the ergo baby under her baby belly. She's got this like 2-year-old that's the size of a 3-year-old, like tallest 2-year-old I've ever seen. She flips her onto her back like it's no big deal, clips her up, grabs her food, like, and in that moment, I'm like, if I had tried that during my first pregnancy, I would have been out on my back for a week. And a lot of this, some of it, like, my mom had always talked about, like, I always was throwing out my back when you kids were little, like all of these things. And like, that had just kind of been normalized to me. And when I saw my friend, I'm like, no, like, you missed something. Like, if she can experience this, why not you? It's not like she was health conscious, but like, I knew that there was a pathway for me to experience that. So I always share, like, if you don't know that a nausea-free, a morning sickness-free first trimester is possible, you're not going to search for the tools, right? You're not going to take any action of it because you're like, well, that's not possible, so why try? And so that's why I'm always here sharing stories, sharing about my clients, because these things don't just work for me, they work for my clients as well. And I have colleagues that do similar work, and they have so many incredible testimonials. I have, for anyone that has really extreme morning sickness or HG, I have a client, Jess, at the Wellness Element. That is her specialty. She literally went from being hospitalized, like, I mean, HG is so, I had just like standard morning sickness with my first. I've never experienced like HD. So I can only imagine, which is why I always refer to her, because she's gone through that. But she literally, like, once she understood the root cause and what the physiology, like what was going on with the physiology, and found the appropriate tools, reversed her HD in like a day to a week. And then she was fine, like hospitalized, on the IV, like all of these things to fine. Just understanding some trigger foods, like what nutrients can help, like break down the things that need to be broken down. And she went on to have a healthy pregnancy, her home birth, all the things. And again, it's as simple as understanding pregnancy does not cause pain, right? Pregnancy is not the cause of pain, right? What causes pain is when you add the stress of pregnancy, and stress isn't a bad thing, right? Having fun is stressful. Having sex is stressful, right? Like in a fun way, right? Dancing is stressful. Like having, like that's this, and we can talk about stress resilience in a bit, because it's really cool. But when pregnancy does not cause pain, the pain comes from a body whose stress bucket is about to overflow. And there's been signs long before you ever get pregnant, right? There's warning signs months, years before. You're not blindsided. The body has been asking for help for a long time. And then when you add the stress of a pregnancy, which can be the kind of stress that is enjoyable and pleasurable, but when your bucket is almost overflowing, then you get these incredible symptoms. But pregnancy is not the cause, because plenty of women, and if you look at the human biological blueprint, morning sickness is not part of the human biological blueprint. It is a modern phenomenon.
I never knew that.
That's fascinating. I mean, I think that's going to resonate with so many moms out there. So how can people find you? Like, where, if they need to like grab at more knowledge or get all of your tricks and solutions. Biohacks. Yeah. Where can they find you?
So I am most active on my Instagram at Alexandra Radway. And if you want to prepare your body for pregnancy, if you want the highest leverage, lowest effort, highest impact, step-by-step process to creating your healthy, happy, thriving pregnancy and natural birth, that is the Baby Ready Body method, which you can find at babyreadybody.com. But yeah, that's how you can find me. And yeah, I could talk all day about this stuff. So you DM, you get some out of me. But the thing is, so the last thing I'll say is that it's hard. Like, it was a lot of work to figure all of this out. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I've devoted about 8 years to my life to this at pretty much a full-time capacity. And that's being, backed with, an MIT degree. I'm pretty smart. I'm good at figuring things out. So that took a while, but the actual implementation is incredibly easy. Like, it is so much easier than I think a lot of people think it's going to be. And as soon as you implement these things, it's like quick wins, because now all of a sudden, I mean, ladies, it's literally, we just add electrolyte drops to their water for a month, no period cramps the next cycle. Dozens and dozens of clients that's happened to. And it's like, okay, yeah, it took you a little bit of time to, buy the drops and like 2 minutes a day to add them to your water. But how much time does it save you to not have like a day of cramps, 2 days of cramps, 3 days of cramps, like that you're not really enjoying your life, right? And that's just one of so many examples that I could draw from. But it's not about moving mountains. It's about the little things that build. And as the more time you give them to build, the more you'll see your life transform. And you don't even know how good, how different you can feel in your body. And that's why you haven't experienced it, because it's like you don't even believe, like you don't even have a frame of reference. You think that what you feel right now is good and normal, but your body has the capacity for so much more.
I love it. Well, let's end it right there because I feel like that's phenomenal. Our bodies have the capacity for so much more, and you are the coach to definitely look up to. So thank you so much for being on our podcast today. I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And then one last thing to our listeners, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It's the best way to support our small podcast and help us reach more moms who need this information. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, Alexandra, and see you next time on Raising Mama Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
You too.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future conversations. And follow us on Instagram at Raising Mama Podcast for more updates, resources, and a peek behind the scenes. See you next time.